Hello, good afternoon. How are you? Today, as I said in the class yesterday, we are going to do a reading practice, okay? So please, first, before we check the reading in our student's book, I want you to look at these pictures. And here you have three different pictures, right? Can you tell me what links these three pictures? What do they have in common? What can you tell me about this? For example, I think that the people in the three pictures are lost because they are holding, I suppose that is a map or something similar, right? And they look like if they are lost, okay? So open your student's book on page 24 and we have a reading, right? So it says, lost at sea. Can you imagine how can you feel if you get lost in the sea? How do you feel if you get lost there? Maybe I feel terrified, scared, okay? Hot, maybe. We don't know, but I think that's a very terrible experience, right? So you have pictures in the reading, so I want you to look at the pictures and tell me, what do you think the text is going to be about? You have three headings: tourist fishing trip disaster, how to protect sea creatures, and fish rescue sailors. So can you tell me, according to the pictures, what's it's going to be the text about? A, B, or C? Okay. Now, please, I want you to read the first paragraph, and it says, a dream holiday turned into a nightmare for an American brother and sister called Dan and Kate Suski. They were enjoying a fishing trip in the Caribbean near the stunning island of Santa Lucia when their boat sank, leaving them and their captain to fight for their lives. Okay, so can you tell me what it's going to be the text about according to these three headings that you have here? Okay, that's right. So, A, it's the correct answer. Okay. Now, it says, read the reading strategy, then read the text focusing on each gap and thinking about what might happen next. So it says, when you do a task with gap sentences in the narrative text, look carefully at the sentence before each gap and think about what is likely to happen next. Then look at the options and see which of the sentences matches your ideas. Finally, check the text, read smoothly with your chosen sentence in place, okay? Remember that these are tips for your reading practice, okay? So pay attention to the reading. I'm going to put the audio. At the same time as you listen, you have to read, okay? So let's start.
Lesson 2F. Tourists' fishing trip disaster.
A dream holiday turned into a nightmare for an American brother and sister called Dan and Kate Suski. They were enjoying a fishing trip in the Caribbean near the stunning island of St. Lucia when their boat sank, leaving them and their captain to fight for their lives. The fishing trip began well enough. The weather wasn't brilliant, but Dan wasn't complaining. He had a huge fish on his line. He was trying to pull it onto the boat, and Kate was helping him. But then, the captain realized there was a problem. Water was coming into the cabin, and the boat was sinking fast. The captain used his radio to send a message for help. Then he shouted to the Suskis, "Jump out! Jump out!" So they did, and a few minutes later, the boat disappeared under the waves. They were about 15 kilometers from land. The captain told the Suskis to wait with him in the water. Help was coming. The weather was now awful, but they were wearing life jackets. After an hour, the captain and the Suskis lost each other, and there was no sign of rescue. So Dan and Kate started to swim as fast as they could towards land. They were both thinking the same terrifying thought: sharks. A plane and a helicopter appeared in the sky, but nobody saw Dan and Kate in the water. Hours passed and night came. The Suskis swam for 14 hours. Then, in the moonlight, they saw some cliffs. They were only a few meters from land. But they couldn't get out of the water here. The waves were breaking against sharp rocks. It was too dangerous. So Kate and Dan swam past the cliffs. By now, they were exhausted. Eventually, they reached a sandy beach. Out of the water at last, they lay down and rested. Then they started to look for a town or village. On the way, they picked and ate green bananas. Dan said later that it was the worst and best food of his life. After 3 hours, they met a young farm worker. He gave them water and food and stayed with them until the police arrived. He also gave them some tragic news. The captain was lost at sea. Dan and Kate Suski spent a few days in hospital. Their story appeared in news programs around the world, and there was one final piece of astonishing news. The captain also survived. A rescue boat found him after 23 hours in the water.
So, can you imagine that difficult situation? Imagine that was a terrible experience, right? So, as you have already listened and read the text, I want you to do exercise 4, and it says, match the sentences A to G with the gaps 1 to 5 in the text. There are 2 extra sentences. Do any of the sentences match your ideas from exercise 3? Okay, so let's do that, okay? You have the spaces here. You only have to match the sentences here with the paragraphs in the text. So take a few minutes to answer that exercise, and as you have finished, let's check your answers. Okay, so it says number 1 is sentence D. So they did, and a few minutes later the boat disappeared under the waves. Number 2, it's letter A. So Dan and Kate started to swim as fast as they could towards land. Number 3, G. Okay, but they couldn't get out of the water here. And number 4, E, out of the water at last they lay down and rested. And number 5, and the last one is letter C. He gave them the water and food and stayed with them until the police arrived. Okay, so the missing sentences were B and F, right? B and F were the missing sentences. So let's continue. So it says in the exercise 3, it says that according to the text, focusing on each gap and thinking about what might happen next. But we have already have our answer in the missing statements, right? We have already answered exercise 4 with the missing gaps. Now, please take a few minutes to answer exercise 5. Explain why the extra sentences in exercise 4 do not make sense in any of the gaps. Remember that we have as an extra sentence letter B and letter F. Okay, so in a little space here, write me, why do you think they don't make sense for this text? Okay, and as soon as you have finished, I want you to answer exercise 6. You have to read the text again. If you want to listen to the text again, put the audio again and answer the sentences if they are true or false. Okay, you only have to write T for true and F for false. And we are going to check this exercise in the next video.